Welcome to Wheelock's Latin, chapter 26. In this chapter, we're going to be looking at the comparison of various adjectives. We'll be looking at Quam with both comparative and superlative adjectives, and we'll also be introducing the ablative of comparison. Let's look first at comparison of adjectives. Now, as you probably remember from your English classes, that adjectives can have varying degrees of comparison. You have just the regular adjective. It's what we call the positive degree. And here's an example, the adjective happy. The comparative degree is happier or more happy. And the superlative degree is happiest or most happy. Here's another example, the adjective long, longer or more long, and longest or most long. Now, some adjectives will sound better in English with either the ER ending or the adverb more in front of it. So either more long or longer, or longest or most long. Just depends on the particular adjective. Now, let's see what this looks like in Latin. Now, here we have the positive, comparative, and superlative formats here. For the positive, of course, it's just whatever the adjective form you've learned in your vocabulary lessons or what you see in the glossary. For the comparative, what you're going to do is take the adjective stem, and generally that means taking the genitive ending off of the adjective, and whatever base or stem you're left with, that is your stem. To that, you're going to add the infix for masculine and feminine comparative. You'll add the IOR, Eor. And then to that, you will add the third declension endings. So this is for masculine, feminine, comparative adjectives. Adjective stem plus Eor plus third declension endings. For the neuter, it's very similar, except in the nominative case. For the nominative, rather than add the IOR infix, we will be adding the IUS infix. And then for the genitive and the following cases, you will go back to the IOR, and then, of course, third declension endings. We'll look at these forms here in just a minute. Now, for the superlative, it's fairly easy. We'll take the adjective stem, and basically it's the us, aum endings, but it's actually isibus aum. So it's the infix issim, isim, plus us aum. So isimus aum. So this works for both first and second declension adjectives as well as third declension adjectives. Let's take a look and see what this looks like. All right, let's use the first and second declension adjective longus aum, longus aum. For the comparative, we're going to add the, for masculine and feminine, we're going to add the IOR in the nominative case. And then for the genitive, it's also the IOR, but we add the third declension ending. So if you remember, its third declension endings are blank, is, eme, es, ibis, es, ibis. So you'll just add all those endings to longior. So that's masculine and feminine. For the neuter in the comparative, it's longius in the nominative singular, but then for the genitive and following cases, you go back to longior plus the third declension ending, so longior is. Don't forget, of course, your neuter rule, whatever's in the nominative will also be in the accusative. Now again, for superlative here, long is your stem. We add isimus aum, so you end up with longissimus aum, longissimus aum. So you have long, longer, and longest. Here's another example of a first and second declension adjective, altus aum. And again, you see the masculine, feminine comparative, altior, altioris. Neuter, altius, altioris. For the superlative, altissimus aum. Now, for third declension, let's look at this adjective, third declension adjective, felix, felicis. All right, notice, of course, the X shifts to a C in the genitive case. So your stem is actually felic, so it's felicis. For the comparative masculine feminine, we take that stem, felic, we add the IOR, so felicior, felicioris, with the endings for genitive and following. For comparative neuter, again, felic, the stem there, plus IUS, so felicius, felicioris. We go back to the IOR for the genitive and following cases, felicioris. And of course, superlative, we take that stem, felic, and we add isimus aum, felicissimus aum. That's a hard word to say. All right, one more example of a third declension adjective, the word for wise, sapiens, sapientis. Your stem, of course, here is sapient. drop the is there in the genitives to get the stem, so sapient. So for the comparative masculine feminine, we have sapient ior, and the genitive sapientior is. For the neuter, again, we're going to add the stem to the stem, the ius, so it's sapientius, and then in the genitive back to the ior, so sapientior is. And then in superlative, of course, sapientissimus aum. All right, so all of these here, we use third declension endings in the comparative, but in the superlative, we use the first and second declension us aum endings. So just to review here, in the positive degree, your first and second declension adjectives will always have their normal us aum endings. Your third declension, of course, will have your third declension blank is e, etc. endings. For the comparative, you're going to have the IOR added to the infix, IOR, added to whatever stem it is. So first and second declension long here. For longus aum, for altus aum, it's alt. For the third declension, of course, you always need to look at the genitive because there's often a shift from the nominative to the genitive in a stem. So here, felic, and for sapien, sapient. So to those, you add IOR in masculine and feminine, and you use the third declension endings, blank, is, e, m, e, etc. For the neuter, just remember that in the nominative case, you use the IUS for that nominative singular. But then we go back to the long EOR. We add the IOR plus, again, third declension endings. And of course, don't forget about our neuter rule. Whatever's in the nominative singular will also be an accusative singular, and a nominative plural will also be accusative plural. So longius is not only nominative singular, it would also be accusative singular as well. Now looking at the superlative, again, here is the infix ism plus the us aum first and second declension endings. So you can see that's consistent for not only first and second declension adjectives, but also third declension adjectives. They'll all work exactly the same. All right, here, let's take a look at declining one adjective all the way through in all of its forms here. Let's go ahead and use the third declension adjective felix, felicis. Felix, felicis. All right, here, so there's your stem, felic, F-E-L-I-C. You're going to have that stem all the way through, and to that, we're going to add our third declension endings. Blank is E, M, E, S, ibis, S, ibis. Now, to form the comparative form, we're going to take, for the masculine and feminine, we're going to take the genitive stem here, and we're going to take felic, and to that, we add the ending or infix IOR. Nominative, there's no ending, so this is just the infix here, IOR. And for the genitive, again, it's felicior. Bring that down, and to that, we again we add the third declension endings, blank is e, m, e, s, ibis, s, ibis. So all those third declension endings. There we go. All right. Now for the neuter, we're going to use the stem again, felic, but we add the infix ius, ius. And again, there's no ending for the neuter here, blank is e. So we got felicius for the genitive. We're going to again take that felicior back to that IOR, and again add the third declension endings, is, e, m, e, etc. Excuse me, correction. Again, this is neuter, so we don't use m, em as our ending in accusative singular. We have that neuter rule. Whatever's in the nominative will also be an accusative. So it's felicius, just like it is in the nominative. But the rest all have the third declension neuter endings. Of course, don't forget a in the nominative and in the accusative plural. So felicior a. All right, so that's the comparative. For the superlative, we're going to take the felic, that stem, and add isimus aum all the way down. All your us, e, o, e, orum, is, os, is, your feminine, I, am, I, arum, is, as, is, and the neuter, e, o, a, orum, is, a, is. So this is how you decline fully an adjective in the positive, comparative, and superlative forms. Okay, now how do we translate these? How do we translate these adjectives in the comparative and superlative forms? Well, let's take felix, the third declension adjective, as our example here. We have felix in the positive, it simply means happy. In the comparative, it's felicior in the masculine and feminine, and in the neuter felicius, so we have happier or more happy. Now, you could also translate this as rather happy if the circumstances are that it's greater than usual. The happiness here is greater than one would expect, so you could say rather happy. But you could also translate it as too happy if it's greater happiness than desirable. It's like really too happy here. too happy. All right, so in the superlative, felicissimus aum can be simply translated as happiest or most happy. However, you can also translate it as very happy if the characteristic here being described is greater than usual or greater than ideal. It's very happy. So this is how we translate these. Now, let's look at some different uses of these comparatives. All right, here the first one is quam with comparatives. Quam with comparatives. When quam follows a comparative degree adjective, specifically it's following a comparative degree adjective, it functions as a coordinating conjunction meaning than. And this will link two items that are being compared. The same case or construction follows quam as precedes it. Let's look at an example here. Hi libri sunt clariores quam elli. Here we have our subject, hi libri, in the nominative plural, these books. And we have clariores, an adjective here that is in a comparative form, nominative plural. We also have elli, the demonstrative pronoun in the nominative plural. And what we have here is this elli being preceded by the conjunction quam. So translation would look like this. Hi libri, these books, sunt are, they are clariores, more famous. This is the comparative form here. These books are more famous. Quam translates this conjunction as than. These books are more famous than elli, those books. So these books are more famous than those books. All three of these, nominative plural, libri, clariores, and elli, because they are all referencing the same thing, and they're being compared together. These books are being compared to those books, and they are more famous than those. So, hi libri sunt clariores quam elli. Notice that again, quam is following the comparative clariores. Now, quam can also be used with superlatives. So when quam precedes a superlative degree adjective, the other one was following, but now we're going to precede a superlative, it functions adverbially and indicates that the person or thing being modified has the greatest possible degree of a particular quality. And as such, you will translate as the blankest possible, or you could also translate it as blank as can be, as blank as can be. So those are two options. Let's look at an example here. Amicus meus erat via quam iacundissimus. So here we have amicus in nominative singular. Iacundissimus is also nominative singular. And we've got quam preceding this superlative. And so now it's functioning as an adverb. So our translation will look like this. My friend, amicus meus, was the pleasantest man possible. That just sounds a little bit awkward. You could also say, my friend was as pleasant as can be. So we have the construct here of quam with the superlative. It's preceding the superlative. So we translate it as the blankest possible, here the pleasantest possible, or as pleasant as can be. So my friend was as pleasant as can be. So that's quam with superlatives. And finally, let's look at the ablative of comparison. The ablative comparison is when the first element being compared is in either the nominative or accusative case. Quam is often omitted, and the second element that follows is in the ablative case. Let's look at an example here. Concilia tua sunt clariora luce. Here we have concilia and clariora in the nominative plural. And we have this clariora being followed by luce in the ablative case. Notice that quam has been omitted. So luce is, rather than in the nominative case, it is in the ablative case here. So this makes it an ablative of comparison. So our translation will look like this. Tua concilia, your plans, sunt, are clearer, clariora, you could also say more clear, clearer than light. So even though the quam is not here, we know that the quam is intended, but this is an ablative of comparison, so it's omitted. The luce, the word light here, is put in the ablative case, but we still add the word than to indicate a comparison here in the English. Your plans are clearer than light. Your plans are clearer than light. So that's the ablative of comparison. Now, compare this with this sentence, concilia tua sunt clariora quam lux. This is the exact same translation here. Your plans are clearer than light. But here we have quam being used in the sentence, in this construction, and the word lux or light is in the nominative case because it is referencing back to the plans, your plans, as it's being compared to earlier. So your plans are clearer than light. So the first one is example ablative comparison. The second example is what it would look like if you did indeed use the word quam. All right, don't forget to study vocabulary. We will have a quiz later this week. Have a good day.